My name's Cowan. I'm a researcher at UCL Institute of Education, and my research mainly focuses on young children's play, communication and digital technologies. My background is in teaching. I used to be an early years teacher, and now I'm based at the Centre for Multimodal Research at UCL Knowledge Lab, which focuses particularly on communication beyond language. So the way that young children communicate is always very rich and complex. They're always drawing upon a wide variety of modes, which might include gesture and gaze and body language and facial expression, amongst lots of other things. And the ways that they make meaning are always fast-paced and fleeting and constantly changing and evolving. And those can be the kinds of activities that are difficult to capture with traditional methods. So using written observations and still photographs won't capture all of that dynamic, ephemeral meaning making. So video can be really appealing because it captures a multimodal record. It's able to record traces of those gestures and gaze and use of objects and so on, alongside language. Video has also been increasingly popular because it's increasingly portable, it's smaller than ever, it's cheaper than ever, and so it's made it more accessible to researchers, and that's sort of seen a big rise in video being used in research with young children. Transcription is a major challenge for researchers using video because traditionally it would have been the case that spoken language would have been converted into written language. When you're interested in the multimodality of video, and that's one of its affordances, its advantages, you have a whole host of other information that you need to attend to. So it can be very difficult deciding what's going to be represented when you're transcribing video. Lots of questions such as how do you transcribe gesture? How do you transcribe gaze? Should you bother to transcribe those things at all? How much detail can you add into a transcript and still make it clear and readable for somebody that wants to understand what your work involves? And every choice, I suppose, with transcription always involves gains and losses. It always involves something being missed out, something foregrounded, something backgrounded. So there's never an easy answer if you're transcribing video. So there's no settled conventions really regarding transcribing video, and researchers are developing their own ways and means of doing this. So some researchers will use grids, for example, timelines, comic strips, all sorts of different inventive ways to try and depict what's happening in video. And I've done this in my own work, in my own research, and probably one of the most challenging episodes that I transcribed was an episode of young children's running play. I was looking at the ways that they were making meaning when they were playing a game of chase, 3- and 4-year-olds. And I tried to do this initially by plotting it onto a sort of timeline, using a program called ELAN to look at the different modes over time. But it really didn't capture that sort of spatial, fast-paced, embodied aspect of their play. It sort of fragmented it and broke it down to something that was very static. So I was having to be quite inventive about new formats for this. And what I ended up doing was trying a sort of map-like transcript design. And I did that by building it up in layers or stages, if you like, going back through the video several times. So the first way that I did it was looking at a bird's eye view of the playground, trying to imagine I was had the camera above, looking down on what the children were doing, and plotted some of the features of the environment onto a map. I then went through the video and approximately traced where they were running around different obstacles and trying to trace those trails of locomotion, if you like, around the space. Because there were multiple children in that, I used different colours to show the different children's movements. I put in arrows not only to try and depict the direction, but also to try and give a sense of the speed that the children were running at. So the arrows are at 1-second intervals apart, approximately from looking at the video back, and they can show where the children were running very quickly or when they were running more slowly. So to try and give a sense of that speed, I used that format in the transcript. And I also wanted to show attention to the stillness. The action was important, but obviously the points where they slowed down and were very still were important too. So I did that by putting numbers into spots on the trail of locomotion to show where they were still and when they were pausing. I then tried to map on the children's speech using speech bubbles to show where at different points in the running game they were talking to each other. And finally, to get a sense of their body language, which wasn't able to be viewed in the map-like transcript, I included a video still of a particular moment when one of the little boys stretches out his arm and makes a very strong gesture just before the game closes. So that was another way of adding in information into the transcript that helped to give a sense of the embodied and active nature of the play. Well, when I tried to document it as a timeline, it just seemed very fragmented and it didn't give a clear sense of the children's changing placement in space over time. So I think this transcript did a better job of that. And it foregrounds the movement of the children much more than a traditional transcript would. It also helped me as I was watching back the video because it slowed down my noticings to things that when you watch through a video at first glance you may well easily missed. So it literally changed my perspective on it because I was having to think of it looking from above, and it slowed down my noticings. So in that way, transcription was very much an analytic tool for looking at this moment of children's play. It wasn't just something that had to be gone through as a sort of administrative stage in the research. Yeah, I mean, for all the insights that it offered, which were many, you know, it slowed down my attention, it drew attention to this winding up of play, and it showed the way that the children were communicating their rules and their roles in the episode of play. But transcription in this way always has limitations. There are always choices about what gets left in and what gets left out, and it can't all be included in any transcript, which means that any transcript is inevitably partial. It also means that transcribing in detail, in close detail in this way, is very time consuming, and it's not suitable for large sections of research, for long pieces of interaction. You might want to do a less fine-grained transcript and just do multimodal transcription for small episodes that you're interested in looking at in close detail. Another major limitation, particularly of this format, was that although it does foreground the placement in space, you don't get a sense of the sequence that the children were running. It's not clear from the map always to see who was chasing who. Right. And so that's why I've been working with the journal Designs for Learning to think about other forms that transcription might take, ways that transcripts might be animated to give a sense of time unfolding. And so I would say transcription is always has a dual purpose. It's both for the researcher to get closer to their data, to look in detail, and to really be a tool of analysis to support noticings, but also a kind of rhetorical tool. It then makes your data visible in new ways to others, to other audiences, so it can be used to help build your argument and bring people into your research. Well, I'm quite excited by the idea of an animated transcript. This was suggested to me by Anna Åkerfeldt, who works for the Designs for Learning journal, and I submitted a paper to her about children's ephemeral meaning making and the map making process that I'd gone through in transcription. And it's quite unusual for journals to think outside of those very typical print-based norms. And that's one of the challenges for researchers for transcription, is that research tends to privilege the written language still. But we're increasingly seeing research being disseminated digitally, so there's no reason in particular why a animated digital transcript couldn't be included as a hyperlink in a journal article, for instance, or as material in an online version of a journal.